Hello, everyone. Welcome to Chasing Collectibles Catchup. I'm Tyler.
Tim?
I'm Lauren.
And with us today, we have a very special guest, our friend Chris from Beardy, Weirdy Comics and Toys. Very nice. I like you had that planned. That was perfect.
I did my homework.
Yeah. So, Chris, before we jump into our interview, thought you'd just tell us a little bit about yourself in general and, what you do and why you're here.
Well, first and foremost, I'm a fan of comic books. I've been a collector since I was 8 years old. Nowadays, and for the last about a decade, I've been a comic book dealer. So I set up at shows all across, well, mostly North and South Carolina, in the Southeast. And then I also run a convention called the Concord Microcon. And I've been doing that for a little over half a decade too. And that's based in Concord. So comic book fan, comic book dealer, comic book collector, and convention runner.
Nice.
Cool.
That's very, very impressive rundown. And so we do know that you are a fan of you're a big music fan as well. Doing live music and such. And so we wanted to ask you, what came first? Is it that you love of comics or your love of music?
I would say the love of comic books came first. The thing that got me into comic books was the X-Men animated series. It came out in 92 and 93. I was 8 years old when that came out. But I will say this, that the theme song had a huge impact on me too. Really cool guitar, even though that's not even guitar, that's actually keyboard in the theme song. But that was something that planted a seed early in my mind, not even really realizing rock music and stuff, but definitely comic books first. And then later on, I feel like this is a common thing too. When you're a kid, you get into comic books, and then later on you branch out into, music. I mean, I feel like that happens a lot. And that's what happened with me. Into comic books, kind of got out of comic books, and then came back into comic books early in college. So, in high school, especially when I was growing up, comic books weren't cool like they are now. There weren't all these movies coming out. Now it's just, it permeates through pop culture. And you can be the cool kid and like comic books. When I was a kid, that was not the case. But you were pretty cool if you could play guitar, or drums, or something. So, comic books came first, for sure.
I definitely agree with what you said about comics being so much more popular now. I'm a high school teacher, and all the kids talk about the comic book movies and all that, and I can reference Thanos. People know who I'm talking about. I'm like, hey, that's neat. It was starting to get that way when I was in high school, and it's really, I think, like you said, become part of the popular culture now.
Yeah, for sure. I feel privileged to live in a time right now when so much stuff is coming out. I mean, some of it is not very good, but most of it's pretty good and stuff. Also, to expand, this is the first comic book I ever bought, which it's not a good read, but it's X-Men 36. 8 years
I
old.
love the cover.
It's shiny. It's shiny, so but bought it at a Food Lion when I was a kid. Not this exact comic book, but this issue. And that's a sign of the times too, when Food Lion or grocery stores or drugstores in general actually carry comic books. So
yeah, really, that is definitely a sign of the times.
Do y'all ever remember buying anything like besides at a comic book store?
I definitely don't.
I do recall buying an issue of Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle Adventures at a grocery store when I was little.
Okay.
And they used to have like a magazine and everything that was really cool that I used to get. And I can't recall the name of it right now. And then of course, I've been a fan of wrestling, for years, and they used to have like their WWE wrestling magazine I used to pick up at grocery stores a lot of times.
I got you.
I would pick up, my big thing was Kiss back in my day. So I would go to the local drugstores and buy all the Kiss magazines. I'd buy 3 each one to cut the pictures out of one side, one to cut the pictures out of the other side, and one to keep.
Wow.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
Nice.
All encompassing.
Most of my comics were, I used to have a subscription to the Amazing Spider-Man back in probably in the 100 and somethings, mostly during the late 70s, early 80s.
Okay.
But so, yeah, I really didn't buy a whole lot of stuff at the comic book shops until later on, when I would try to go to all the different shops around and see if I could fill in like my Web of Spider-Mans, my Spectacular Spider-Mans, and then the Amazing Spider-Man. I would try to do that. Right now, I do have almost a full run of Amazing. I have from 34 to present of straight run. So, that's been a lot of years.
I mean, there's no books I'd rather have on my wall at a show than Silver Age Spider-Man stuff. I mean, I
Yeah.
think that's also one of the best runs you can buy. I don't like saying investing in comic books. I don't like that phrase, but I mean, Spider-Man stuff, Silver Age stuff. I mean, I feel like everyone likes it. Everyone likes Spider-Man.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
It's definitely what they call a blue chip book, especially the early stuff. I mean, that's never gonna change, I don't think.
Yeah. I'm still working on my numbers of the earlier,
Oh.
the
Man,
earlier
you just
stuff.
made me into a jellyfish.
Nice.
Well,
That's
Lauren, what
rocking.
about you said so you had a subscription. Did they ever like the subscription crease? They ever fold them and jam them in a mailbox or anything?
Yeah, most of them they would not fold it in half, but they would do the roll. They would take it and do this, and then stick it down into the mailbox, so it didn't damage it too much. So I got lucky there. They didn't squash it to try to stuff it in a box. Luckily, we had a big enough box that it would, if it fit in this way, a lot of times it would end up opening up inside the box itself. So I got lucky.
Gotcha.
But they were in the bag. You had to pull it out of the bag. Take out the little cardboard thing, the little subscription card that said renew. So that's how I got my books.
Do you remember how much a subscription cost back then?
Well, at
A hay penny, right?
probably 25 cents to 35-cent range a piece. So it was probably, times 12, and they give you a discount. So it wasn't too much at all, like $4 or $5.
Basically
Wow.
the cost of one comic book nowadays.
Yep. Yep.
Nice.
For a whole year. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, sign of the times. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
Well, before we move too far from the music stuff, I know one time we talked to you, you were mentioning, you got all these cons going on, then you got some live music. So how do you balance all that? You got, Comic Cons, you got running your physical location, if you got live music, what's the balance between your two passions?
Well, okay. So nowadays I don't play live a lot. Music was a big part of my life from the age of 17 to 27. I was in a band called Sugar Glider. I pulled out some CDs, again at show and tell time. But I mean, I did that for a long time. We played in a lot of states. Eventually got signed. I also played in a comic book themed band called Solar Cat with my better half, Sarah. She's usually at shows with me. But as far as nowadays, I just put out a solo EP back in October. And I just, I'm not really trying to tour. I'm not really trying to play out a ton, but I did start running an open mic night over at Cabaret Brewing Company, which is the same spot that I put on the Concord Microcon at. So I love those kind of events because it's good for people that maybe want to try playing in front of people for the first time. It gives them an outlet. It gives them a platform to try something. So I like being real supportive of, ground level stuff and getting people going. So as far as other aspects of music in my life, I'm not playing out, I'm not touring and stuff. That was a gigantic part of my life, years ago though. I'm 35 now. So but yeah, as far as managing all the shows and stuff, I do shows almost every weekend. This weekend I have off, and last weekend was my first weekend off this year. So managing that can be a lot. And then also just picking up collections and stuff, that can be a little bit of a challenge. Last week I picked up about 10,000 books, but yeah, music will always be a big part of my life and stuff. And you know, I'll be putting out another solo EP later this year too. But yeah, I, you know, back when I used to tour as well, and this is probably going to connect to something, you know, later, but that's how I got into selling comic books, is when I used to tour with my old band. I mean, we weren't signed, and even when we were signed, it wasn't a lot of money, let's be honest.
Yeah.
But it was selling stuff mostly just online before I was doing shows. You know, most of the eBay route was a really good way to supplement my income on the road. So yeah. So as far as managing life, I do what I can. As far as music, I'm not playing out as much as I used to. I'm not touring, you know, 3/4 of the year on the road. That was a lot of fun, but I like the weekend warrior stuff with the comic book conventions nowadays. So
Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah, we like seeing you every weekend at the show.
I mean, I try to do it as much as I can. So you know, it's a really good scene, and I love, you know, I was talking about selling online. There's nothing better than selling a comic book at a show, because you get that conversation with someone.
Yeah.
I mean, you talk about movies, just like we're talking right now, all the stuff that's coming out. When you sell online, it's a pretty cold, there's no real connection. It's a pretty bland experience, but it shows, I mean, it's just a lot more exciting, a lot more personable. And that's really what it's all about. So I hope conventions never go away. When the pandemic, you know, started and stuff shut down, it was really scary, because shows, you know, were closing and stuff. And, you know, that's one of my favorite parts, you know, of the comic book stuff, is just going out to shows, talking to people.
Yeah.
Yeah. So tell me, how did you get how did you first get into comic books as a career? I mean, would you say that that's like I mean, it sounds like that's your main career. So how'd you get started on that?
Well, to circle back to you know, the band days, I mean, there wasn't really much money. And even when we were signed to Warner Brothers, I mean, people had these misconstrued notions of making all this money and, you know, this lavish lifestyle. It's not like that, especially at the time we were signed. So selling online was a good way to supplement my income. And then when the band that I was in that was signed broke up, I started doing some appraisal stuff for an auction house, and also started selling at an auction house, like a physical thing, not eBay, an actual physical auction house. So I got into that way. And then I also met my good friend, Josh Almond, which he actually is the co-founder of the Concord Microcon. And we were tooling around for a few years, or a couple years. And we decided, let's set up at, you know, the Charlotte Comic-Con. And we did that. And, you know, it's kind of one of those things, like, if you do it, I'll do it. And there's sort of like strength in numbers or whatever. Like, let's try this new thing that we haven't tried. We do it together. If it fails, whatever, we do it to, you know, and if it succeeds, even better. So we started doing that. And then a couple years later, we started the Concord Microcon. So it was really just, I mean, in a way, it was me being 27 and, you know, my old band breaking up, and being like, well, I was already doing this. This was actually the thing that was paying the bills. Maybe not necessarily going to conventions, but selling online and stuff. So it's like, well, let's just take that effort that I was using more so over here and just plop it over here. And I mean, for me, I mean, it's been very successful. I mean, I've liked it a lot. It's much better than your standard 9-to-5 job. I mean, there are, like, when you buy collections, and hopefully we can get to this later, but there are some really great experiences, and then there's some terrible experiences, and there's everything in between. So, but, you know, but yeah, just a change of life, just focusing on this other aspect of life when this other thing kind of, you know, decreases a little bit.
Mm.
Yeah. So, and the thing is, I always like comic books too. So, I mean, it's always been a part of my life. So it was sort of like the path of least resistance. You know what I mean? Like, and meeting Josh at that time was a really good thing too, because it was a common interest, and we were already selling online and doing stuff like that. I was saying, the auction house, so it just made sense. Just do it.
Yeah,
absolutely.
And throughout the years, I mean, the more and more shows you set up at, the more and more people and I mean, things just go from there. So much of life is the people that just like I'm sitting here with you guys right now.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Everything leads to something else.
Yeah, exactly.
But to answer your question, just the band kind of falling apart, and then focusing on the thing that was actually truly paying the bills, and just kind of watering that seed a little bit more.
Yeah.
Yep, that's awesome. So in your hunting around and everything, you've got comics to sell, but what about personal collection? Do you have your own collection that you have, and what are some of the cool things in it?
Yeah, so I have a collection of about 20,000 comic books in my personal collection.
Wow.
Yeah. So up at my little retail spot, I have about 7,000. Then I don't even know what I have in my convention stock, because it's always changing. But my personal collection is around 20,000. And this is I mean, I'm not going to do a whole spin around, but if you look, I mean, there's boxes all around. But I primarily collect Marvel or excuse me, just Marvel, silver, and bronze. I think the only DC books in my collection, I have a full run of Watchmen. That's it.
No DC love.
Well, okay. I'll sell. I will sell
DC.
No.
Okay, so this is my logic. I have 20,000 Marvel books. I have 20,000 DC books, and right now, the house that I'm in, I have a whole room just dedicated to my personal collection. So that's about it right now. But as far as, I mean, I pulled some stuff just to show and tell. I mean, X-Men 1, that's a good book.
Yes.
I mean, this was a highlight from in 2019. I had picked up a collection from a store that had gone out of business in the mid-90s, like a lot of places did, but it was a little over 500,000 comic books. So it was a lot of work just to get that stuff moved. It took 2 days. Me and Sarah really hustled. You were talking about Lauren, you were talking about putting together a full Spider-Man run. This is, sorry about the glare, guys, but this is from a complete Spider-Man run I picked up in Cary, North Carolina. I think it was in 2018. It might have been 2019, but this is one of the books that I kept from it. I upgraded a bunch, like the Spider-Man 1 I upgraded. And when I consider Amazing Spider-Man, I consider 1 to, what is it, 449, 448. And then they started the numbering change, and then they went back. So I consider that the original run. So he had the original run, but this was a fun.
Oh, nice.
I mean, yeah, Fantastic Four 1. It's only a 1.0, but whatever.
Don't tell Larry. Larry's looking for one.
Well, yeah, I mean, who isn't? I mean, in my opinion, that should be the most valuable Silver Age Marvel book, not Amazing Fantasy 15. Of course, everyone loves Spider-Man, but without Fantastic Four 1, there wouldn't have been an Amazing Fantasy 15.
Right.
Let's just be honest. So, but other finds, and also this is off topic, but any of these books I'm showing, I don't press my books. So if you see a grade, I got it graded. I didn't press it. So, I mean, this was a fun find.
Nice.
I mean,
Yeah,
the
good grade.
9.4.
Hey, that's the reprint.
No.
Yep, I have one of those as well. I've got a 9.0.
I've got about 10 reprints.
I mean, they've done a lot of different kinds. Yeah, I saw a video the other day of someone that bought it looked very legit, but it was a counterfeit. Anyways, though, that Hulk 181, it was in a long box I bought out in Locust, North Carolina, which is close to Reed's Gold Mine, kind of, if you know where that is. There used to be a taxidermy spot called Stuffy's. I don't know if you guys are into that at all, but there were 2 Hulk 181s in there. One came back in 85. That was a 9.4. And then this is the book that really blew my mind. It's a 9.6 with white
man.
pages.
Jeez,
Wow.
My gosh.
that's pretty.
So another book, this was last fall. I went out to Burlington, North Carolina, which is going towards Raleigh. And this guy had, a lot of these people are hoarders, okay? And a lot of these people, I go check out stuff that's they're not comic book collectors per se, but he had between 15 and 20 barn shed things outside. So I dug through a bunch of them, but some of the best finds in there was Strange Tales 110. So topical, first Doctor Strange, not the best cover, but very culturally significant. And then I already showed this, but there was a Spider-Man 1. It came back at 2.5.
Nice.
That's
So,
sick. Wow, that's beautiful. Oh,
I'm
man.
sweating over here.
so just Lauren, just so you know, I have a full Spider-Man run in my personal collection. So I had said a few years ago, I had picked up a full run, which is, it's always cool. But if someone has curated a collection like that, you're going to be paying up for it. So like if someone has like 1 or 2 keys, it's one thing. But if someone has curated books from the early 60s to the mid 90s, they know what they're doing. So, it's gonna, it's one of those things, but yeah, man, there's stuff out there Tyler, to answer your question, there's stuff out there, all the time. So, but I think that's one of the only books I kept from that full Spider-Man run though.
Well, we got a fun segment on the show where we have our guests tell everybody their address and what security system they use. No, I get it. But that is so cool. And you mentioned the finding in the whole run. I don't want you to diverge any trade secrets, but can you tell us about like any sort of cool or unique experiences you've had with hunting for comics? I remember seeing once, I think it was from Heroes, they posted a video once of Sheldon where he was like digging through comics and they had all these like little bugs around the boxes. Like, have you had anything like that, or just any cool diamonds just in the most bizarre places? Or
well, okay, I would consider all of these beautiful diamonds, but I would like to share a couple. Okay, so I have found Hulk 181s at yard sales. It happens, okay? But I would like to talk about some of the horror stories. We're talking about bugs and stuff. This was coming back from, it was a convention in Marion. I don't think any of y'all came out to that. But I think there was another convention that same weekend. But Marion's going towards the mountains. And there were termites had eaten through a bunch of the comic books.
Brutal.
Yeah. So, and I've seen that, not a ton, but enough. But there was a house in Huntersville that had they had called me, and the crazy thing about it was the books they had in their attic, everything was from 1950 to 1959. So their kids had aged. Say it again.
Man.
Yeah. So their kids had aged out. So when you look at that time period, there's not going to be a Fantastic Four 1. There's not going to be an Amazing Fantasy 15. So all that stuff predates that. But with that, there's like pre-code horror, like EC stuff. There's great DC keys from that era and stuff. So anyways, this stuff had been stashed up in the attic since 1959. It was in Huntersville, so pretty wealthy area. And they were going to bulldoze the house because the land was worth more to develop a housing development than just to sell the house. It was a very old house. So I go up in the attic, and number one, it's army crawling. It's a very, very shallow attic. It's an old house. But it's so hot up there. I almost passed out twice. But the thing that was sad about it, or like a horror story, is that I'm grabbing boxes and they're literally just turning to dust.
Wow.
Oh.
So, there was great, EC pre-code horror stuff. The biggest DC book, and these are all books that actually survived. They were low grade, but the best DC book was the first appearance of Crypto the Super Dog, which was pretty neat. But I mean, that's a horror story because you're like, there's no
Right.
way to change what's happening. You're like, I mean, this is hundreds, thousands of dollars worth of stuff that's just turning to dust because it's been in the attic since 1959. So it's just dry rotted basically. I mean, I run into lots of cat hoarder houses. This is a very common thing. And there was a house up in Rutherfordton, and I don't want to get into the gritty details, but there were so many cats. The floor was rotting. I was trying to move boxes. Became a safety hazard. And there's plenty of situations like this that happen. I've seen dead raccoons, dead rats. There was a hoarder. It was like an old video rental store up in Spencer, North Carolina, which is past Salisbury. All kinds of great stuff. But I mean, it was just absolutely disgusting, the stuff that was in there, but there was great stuff hiding. So sometimes you have to, for all the great experiences, there's all this like nasty, terrible, kind of dangerous stuff that you also go through. Yeah, I don't like heights. There was this blackberry farm I had to go out to in Mount Pleasant, North Carolina. It was at the top of this barn. I don't know why he had all of his comic books stored up there, but the ladder that we were using was not safe.
It's a quest.
So, yeah, I mean,
you gotta find
like
it.
Exactly. Yeah. So, and the funny thing too is that house in Huntersville, I was like the third person they called, but it was a little dangerous. It was real tight, but I don't mind that because I mean that's sort of the fun as long as you don't really hurt yourself.
Right. Then you got the story.
Yeah. It sounds like something that they can make like a reality show like off of or something. Like.
Well, I mean, it's 1 degree away from American Pickers. That's really all that's playing off of, you know what I mean? So, I mean, I would love to have someone filming sometimes, but I don't know.
I guess you gotta respect people's privacy to an extent and all that. And
and at the same time, some of the situations are pretty off the wall. So. But it is terrifying to see like valuable books, early Silver Age stuff, late Golden Age stuff just crumbling in your hands.
Yeah.
So, but I mean that's some horror stories. But I mean, picking up 500,000 comic books, finding Hulk 181s at yard sales. I mean, those are stuff that happens, and I'm very thankful, for it to happen. So I mean, those are positive things.
Yep. Most definitely. Yeah, I found my Hulk 181 at a comic book shop years ago, and I bought it for $75. And I couldn't believe what I was doing. What am I doing? I'm in my 20s, I think, and just going, what am I doing? I could be buying symbols. But I bought that book, and I've had it ever since. And I've had it graded. It came back in 9.0, and I still have it. And, it's one of my treasures for sure.
I mean, in my opinion, there's a lot of them out there, but again, it's supply versus demand. Everyone wants that book. In my opinion, there's no more desired Bronze Age book out there. So, yeah. What do y'all think?
I think that I think that's true.
I think that is true, but some of the other thoughts I have with the Hulk 181 is everyone focuses around it's Wolverine's first appearance. That's the big thing about that book. People don't really know who actually worked on the book. People don't think about who actually did the drawing. Herb Trimpe, being the artist on that book. No, not too many people actually know. They just know that, oh yeah, it's Wolverine's first appearance, and I want a copy. Yeah, even if it costs me $2,000 or $3,000, that's about right.
That's it.
Well,
it's a lot more now.
It's a lot more.
Wait till he comes to the MCU, and then it's going to be out of this world.
Well, Lauren, do you have a Hulk 180 as well? I
do not.
Oh, okay.
Nope. I wish I did, but currently it's out of my range. That's a $1,000 book, thousands of dollars book.
Yeah, that was actually one of the easier ones for me to get when I was doing my Hulk run, and I'm happy that I got that and my 181. So I think the 181 was the most, that was probably the priciest one I've bought thus far. I still am missing, I think, like 4 issues, which is like, the single digit numbers of Hulk, Incredible Hulk.
I don't have a Hulk 1, 2, or 3 in my personal. Those are tough books to find.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think like my 5 and I think like my 6, I think I got those off of Larry Allen.
Okay.
Goes back to what you're talking about cons, the people you know.
Yeah. Hey.
Yep.
So
yeah. Also, hey, speaking of that, I just want to interject with, again, people I it would be doing this whole conversation a disservice if I didn't acknowledge Dave Henson. When I was a kid, I used to go to Dave's Comics because I grew up in the Waxhaw area. So where his shop was located in Fort Mill, it wasn't that long of a drive.
I think we know that guy.
Yeah, I've heard of him.
Yeah. So that was actually where I had my first job ever. And I use that term very loosely, but it was the summer of when I was in 5th grade. So I just bagged, boarded, and sorted. But that was another thing that just solidified at a very young age. I just liked being around it. Again, people would just walk in, you just have conversations with people. The internet was not a thing at that time, but that was definitely something that had a gigantic impact on me, growing up, and just solidified a lot of stuff for me. So,
yeah. Growing up, I've always really gravitated towards comic book shops that were, a lot like Dave, smelled like old books, and you just never knew what you would find in there. And when I first moved down here a few years ago, Dave had his shop, and I went in there. I just kind of right away knew like this was going to be my shop where I'd pick up my weeklies. And, unfortunately, a few short years later, Dave decided, to close up, but those things happen. And I was, the time I spent there at the shop, just hanging out with Dave, shooting the breeze, talking shop was always great.
Yeah, when I was a kid, I used to go to Dave's. The Charlotte Comic Con happened back then, but he also used to run the Rock Hill Comic Con down, and I was so excited several years ago when he brought it back, because I'm like, dude, that was a huge part of when I was a kid, and you're bringing it back. That's awesome. So I have that's my favorite show I set up at in South Carolina. It's far from the biggest, but it is my favorite just because, again, I have a soft spot for that. So, yeah. What about y'all? When you were, growing up, did you guys have a local shop that, was your haunt or anything? Or
well, mine was Dave's also.
Okay.
I started, probably later than you did, but I was, I guess my first books, in middle school, high school, I started really collecting comics. And, I remember, going in there when I was a freshman in high school. And then when I was a senior, I started bringing my girlfriend, and he was like, tell me when you guys get married. And then, we got married and all that. So it's cool with Mr. Dave. I still call him, I don't know, when I can't not call him Mr. Dave. I don't know. I got to train myself out of it, but it's just like, he's almost like an uncle or a grandfatherly figure in a way. He's such a great guy. And that was my comic book store. And then, this Nickel Spot Comics with, then I got to work for was pretty cool.
And for me, I grew up in Portland, Oregon, so I had a whole bunch of different shops that I went to regularly. There was, I would go every week just to see if they had. I started collecting Spider-Man toys, as you could probably see. I got a whole room full of toys and memorabilia. So that was my main thing, was going to all the shops just looking for toys and then trying to fill in the runs of the books. But there was more than one shop where I was from. I've only been here about 14 years. And but yeah, when I first got here, Dave's was the first comic book store that I went to, and that was my regular stop, every week to go in there and buy books and, try to fill in my Spider-Man run and anything else that I could find that was cool. And he'd always, every time I go in there, are you ready to sell that 181? You ready to sell? I'm like, nope, sorry, not happening.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, when I was about 11 years old in the early 90s, I started buying from a shop called Laurie and Me in Manalapan, New Jersey. And then after that, I went to a place called Zap Comics.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Their first, or maybe it was their second shop, but they had a shop in the Freehold Mall. And then I went, from their shop in the Freehold Mall, I stuck with them when they got another shop in Manalapan. And it's how I also got to know Corey. He's the owner of Zap, or I, sort of knew him. And, every time I go back to Jersey, I love going to visit, the Zap. They have 2 shops now. I love going to visit there. And then there was the Comic Crypt. This guy Brian, that I bought from him from another shop for, it was just under a year that he worked at, and then he bought his own shop. And I went, one day to visit this shop called the Comic Crypt, and I was like, "Wait, what are you doing here?" He's like, "I own the store." I was like, "Oh, great! I guess I'll get my weeklies from you." And stuck with him a few years, and he's a really good guy. So
Gotcha.
he's there.
Well, hey, I want to circle back just because you said Zap Comics. Y'all were talking about experiences, whatever. Have y'all ever been to the Renaissance Festival in Huntersville?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah. No. Okay. Are you familiar with it?
No.
I've been. It's a good. I love it.
Okay. Well, there's literally a thing there called the Dungeon. Okay. So I picked up a collection in the attic of the Dungeon. This was probably 3 years ago, but most of the stickers on there were from Zap Comics.
Huh.
Wow.
So a lot of these Renaissance people, they travel around, and this guy, I guess he had picked up a bunch then. The best book in there was a Spidey 300, cliche stuff like that. But yeah, that dude, almost all of them were from Zap Comics. So just to circle back. So
that's pretty cool.
Yeah.
So,
long way.
Yeah, but it's like a dungeon at the Renaissance Festival. So
they have all
from a dungeon. I don't know if many people can say they've done that, and I'm very proud to be one of the few. So
so all right. So moving on. We talk about shops and conventions. What would you say? What is your favorite part about attending conventions? Would you say?
It is for sure just the conversations with people about, the movies coming out, the TV shows coming out. Again, I feel privileged to live in an era when there's so much, again, for the most part, quality stuff coming out. That's that. Again, selling online is fine, and there's certain stuff that's great for it. But anytime you can sell a book to, a flesh and blood person and have a conversation with that person and an experience with that person, that's the whole point. So I would say, that's my favorite thing, just interacting with people. And I love getting people's perspective on, like, what did you think about that? Or, have you ever seen this book in this grade? Or, I people are always walking around with their stuff, what they've bought. It's like, what have you picked up? I like, it's an environment that I enjoy being in, just because it's an immersive thing all about comic books.
Yeah.
So
absolutely.
Yeah.
Okay. Just sort of in the same area. What's the biggest book that you were able to pick up because somebody came up to you at a convention and said, "Do you buy comics?" And you say, "What does my hat say?" What's the biggest
I say
book?
that a lot. I try to make it real easy. At shows, it's a little different because it's a very competitive market. But let's see. Well, hold on. mean, this was, and I've already filed away my slab copies, but someone brought up in Raleigh some slab copies of this, which is actual first appearance or Silver Age appearance of Captain America, and then Iron Man and Submariner. A guy also came up with a. Now this is PGX. I had no hate for PGX or CBCS or CGC, but first issue of Captain America 100.
Nice.
But more specifically, it's not even the walk-ups, man. It's the people, you have a conversation with someone because, you put up a sign, you wear a hat, you communicate clearly what you're doing there. I'm here to buy comic books. So Florence, South Carolina has been a very bountiful place for me. People have been just driving their collections up. New Year's Eve, I bought a great collection. Forgive me for not remembering exactly what was in there. I'd have to look at my Instagram feed, but lots of great stuff. Multiples of great books. There was a guy too, just maybe 3 weeks ago. One of the best books in there was an X-Men 94. That was an 8.0. Silver Age Riddler, which I still have.
I got.
I think I had that down in Greenville. I think that was one of the first shows
Yeah.
I brought it to. I haven't had it for very long. Gosh, there isn't anything mind-blowing. There isn't anything over probably $1,000 or $2,000 that someone has walked up with. But as far as just getting the callbacks, because hey, there's this, hey, there's that. So I think so much of life success is just communicating, this is what you do. So I try to spoon feed that to people, anyone that's there. And also, talking about conventions, if I see someone walking around with a box, I say, what you got in the box, man? Because it's either something they bought, which we can have a conversation, about, or it's something for sale. So you can't ever be afraid to ask, you know what I mean?
Right.
So, but yeah, this is just recent stuff. And literally it was a slab copy of this and a slab copy of that. I think they were both 6.0s or 6.5s. I can't remember. I've already filed them into my slab boxes on top. So, but no Spider-Man ones, no Amazing Fantasy 15s, but shows are a great place to buy stuff. And it doesn't have to be from dealers. I mean, people that are just coming there, that's another great thing about conventions too, is the people that you'll meet and the potential leads that you'll get. You just have to follow up with them. That's the most important thing of anything. It's just the follow up and the follow through.
Absolutely.
So,
Yeah.
But yeah, I wish I had something more exciting to say, like, oh man, it was an Action Comics 1. He walked in the door, but that didn't happen. But conventions are a very competitive space because everyone's buying. So sometimes you get the good stuff, sometimes you don't, and everything in between. And that's part of the game.
Yeah.
But as far as leads from conventions, though, it's usually pretty good. Okay, I will say this is probably, and this was last year, this was one of the best leads that I got from a collection, or for a collection ever, and it was a mostly DC collection. But the biggest book was a Brave and the Bold 28, so first Justice League. I don't know if you guys know Andy from Bonafide Comics.
Yeah, I think I've met him a couple of times, I think.
It's mostly like a yellow and red vibe is his like colors, but he picked it up for me. He got it slabbed. We did a big trade and cash and stuff, but it came back, I think, a 4 or 5. So
Cool.
I don't know. That's a big book. I put that in the same caliber as an Amazing Fantasy 15 or a Fantastic Four 1, just in the DC realm.
Yeah.
Again, if it wasn't for that book, there wouldn't be a lot of this, because that really started the fire. There wouldn't be Fantastic Four 1 if it wasn't for the Justice League's first appearance. Marvel, I feel like, was kind of using that this superhero team book selling, let's do something like that ourselves,
Right.
Yeah.
But yeah,
Well,
that's probably one of the best leads I've gotten at a show. in the last year or so. Yeah.
That's cool. That's it's always cool to hear stories about finding books. I remember when I went to work with Nick, our first thing was to go down south and get a collection. We my 3 rider rent trucks. It was, I don't even remember. It was a huge amount of comic books, a lot of silver, a lot of bronze, a lot of
The
modern.
good stuff. The good stuff.
Yeah. But it was mostly moderns, but there was some good stuff in there, and there was some really good stuff in the silvers. I mean, we had that collection for quite a while, trying to work it, and it was my nightmare, because it was so huge. I mean, the boxes filled up this room, and it must have been 10 feet back and 7 feet wide and 6.5 to 7 feet tall.
You took a picture laying on it, didn't you?
Long box. Yeah, I did have a picture of me laying on it on the top. Yeah. And then having to go through it was just brutal.
Well,
that's how those new mints got downgraded to fines.
Yeah. Climbing all over it.
Well, Lauren, that's what you're talking about right now is one of the, I don't know if a lot of people talk about that when they're dealers, and I don't think probably a lot of people that attend shows probably realize the amount of work you said it was a nightmare, right?
Yeah, it was a fun nightmare, but yeah.
It can be overwhelming. And I will say this too. I mean, long boxes, moving 10 is something, moving 100, 1,000 of them, whatever. That can get a lot for anyone. Also, I don't know if you guys have ever noticed, but modern books, my goodness, they weigh so much. So books from 2000 and now, they weigh like a long box weighs twice as much as like a silver and bronze and copper age box. It's crazy.
Yeah,
so
they make it out of a different paper.
Exactly. Yeah.
Heavier paper.
Yeah, those suckers are heavy. But yeah, Lauren, what you're saying, it takes a lot of work and time and effort to present stuff and get it ready and process it. Yeah. So
I hear there's a convention coming up in May of yours. If you would give us a little rundown on it and tell us about all the specifics about it.
Okay, so yeah, the Concord Microcon, May 7th this year. It is always the first Saturday in May. It is at a brewery, Cabarrus Brewing Company. They are located near downtown Concord. The address is 329 McGill Avenue. That's Concord, North Carolina, 28027. The convention this year is from 11 until 4. Comic books is always the main focus of the show. So we'll have lots of comic book dealers. There'll be toys at Cabarrus Brewing Company inside the main tap room. There's an upstairs, and we call that the Artist Attic, and that's dedicated just to artists. This year, we're also expanding. The brewery has been doing very well, and they bought out another brewery space that is parallel to them called High Branch Brewing Company. So that's actually where I'm hosting the open mic nights every other Thursday up there. But this year, the Concord Microcon is expanding to new places. And that's all part of the Gibson Mill complex. But yeah, so May 7th this year from 11 until 4 p.m. It's also always free. On site, we'll have several food trucks as well. Cabarrus Brewing Company also has a restaurant inside as of just a couple months ago. They just opened that up. This is also the same spot that they have Food Truck Friday for Cabarrus County. So there's a whole lot that's made just for food trucks. But yeah, comic books, artists, food trucks, beer, free admission. It's usually a pretty good time, and there's plenty of dealers that new dealers that maybe haven't set up at the show. They're like, well, is beer is it a problem? Has anyone spilled something and destroyed something? And luckily we haven't had any accidents. We had one dealer and he doesn't set up with anymore, and he kind of bumped into another person's rack, but everyone's kept the peace for the most part. But yeah, so just to recap, the Concord Microcon is May 7th this year. It's always the first Saturday in May. It's free admission, comic books, food trucks, beer, that kind of stuff. This show, it's also the 5th year. It should have been the 6th year, but 2020, I had to cancel about 2 weeks before it happened because COVID stuff. Typically, most years, I also don't charge vendors and artists. My whole, both me and my friend Josh, we started this together, and our whole goal was just to give, newer dealers, or again, maybe people that weren't as established in the scene, an outlet. And probably the dealer that has seen the most growth and success since he set up at the Concord Microcon would be Wayne from Smashers Comics. The Concord Microcon was his first show. And again, not to circle back to what we were talking about before, but it's all about the people that you know. So he's like, I'm trying to get into the scene. And, he was trying to get into the Charlotte Comic Con. So Rick and Dave's show. I was like, set up here, I'll introduce you. And then one thing leads to another. And then, he's at a lot of shows too. He's a very, in North and South Carolina, you'll see him at a lot of the shows as well. So the whole goal was just to be supportive of free events. And yeah, so if you like comic books, you like beer, and there's something to eat while you're there too. So
yeah.
So also
how many vendors
year,
are going to be there?
Right now we have 38 tables booked. And I think it is about 32 vendors. So there's a couple people that have multiple tables and stuff. Last year, because of the pandemic stuff, we were one of the first shows that came back. So it was a major labor of love. And since it's at a brewery, there's certain extra regulations and insurance stuff that you have to worry about. And we had to do most of the convention outside, which comic paper and outside aren't the best of friends.
No.
So you get a breeze or it's raining. Luckily, the day was absolutely beautiful. So I already have a lot of gray, but leading up to that event, I got a little bit more just because, it's real stressful. You want to run the best event you can with the rules that are in place. You work with what you have. So this year we will have some people outside, but not many comic vendors. But yeah, there'll still be some people. Some of the vendors absolutely loved it. So it's like, okay, but it is nerve-wracking having most people outside, and homeboy's got a Hulk 181 on the wall. Not to bring that back up again, it's like, all it would take is a little bit of rain or something and disaster. Yeah. But all the outside spots, they are covered, but still, yeah. So that was a struggle last year, but it was a huge success. So nice.
Well, we're gonna be sure to post all about that on our Facebook page and promote it, and we're excited and appreciate your friendship, and you seem to be about a lot of stuff that we're about, which is just spreading the word. And we got our own little business too, but at the end of the day, we're like, hey, if you want to talk comics, you got something going on, we want to promote it and do what we can to help out the community.
Mm-hmm.
And so as we're oh, go ahead, I'm sorry.
Oh, I just greatly appreciate it. That's all I was gonna say.
Yeah.
Can I give a quick social media plug?
Or I actually had one more question for you before we wrap up, and then if
sure.
you want to end with the social media, and this can be like a 1-2 minute answer. Keep it brief. But let's say somebody comes up to you and talking about community, somebody brand new, because I think that a passion thing of mine is like we need more people buying comics because we got to keep it going. If somebody comes up to you and says, Chris, I want to get into buying comics, I want to collect, Spider-Man or Batman or whatever, but I don't know where to start. What is your piece of advice to that person besides buy my comics?
Okay. So this is what I would suggest, and this is what I have suggested to people. I think trade paperbacks are a great way to get into reading comic books, and ultimately I think that's the most important thing. Collecting them and for the money thing is cool, but you should genuinely like it first and foremost. So I think one of the best things that people can get are like the Marvel Essentials. They're dirt cheap. You can get them at conventions all the time for between $5 and $10, sometimes even less. Even brand new, they're not very expensive for the amount of material that you're getting. The beauty of those too is you can read whole story arcs. So there's not, dollar bin diving is the next best thing. But then you might have to, and for a new reader, they might read something and be like, well, I'd love to see what happens next. Well, this is a great, cheap, very, very easy way to do it. And then another thing, as far as titles, there is no run of books that I enjoy more than Bronze Age X-Men. I think it's very accessible and appeals to a lot of different people. So, I mean, I'm literally holding an X-Men Essential, but I would say that most new readers couldn't go wrong. I mean, the late 70s and 80s stuff, it's a little dated, but a lot of the things and the themes and still ring true. I would also say that, the Bronze Age Spider-Man stuff, really any Spider-Man stuff, everyone loves Spider-Man, and opinions will vary and mileage will vary, but overall, I mean, Spider-Man stuff, if you can get some graphic novels or some essentials, some thick stuff, which is essentially just reprints, but read it, figure out if you enjoy it, and then if you do, maybe track down the actual issues, the real things, and take it from there. So I would, with any hobby, I wouldn't throw yourself full in and buy a Hulk 181 and a 9.4 for $20,000. I don't think that's a good idea. But buying something like this at a convention for $5 or $10, hell yeah, that is the absolute best thing that you can do. But again, characters like Spider-Man, X-Men, they're universal characters that lots of good storylines, good stuff. And the thing too is, popular characters, they've been out for forever, so there's so much to choose from. But Bronze Age X-Men, get some essentials. They're real cheap. I mean, this was $16.99. I'm sure you could find that at most shows, bigger shows, for $5-10. So, nice. But yeah, that's what I would say. That's the most economical way. And you can, if you don't like it, then so be it. You're not
no harm, no foul. Again,
right. Yeah. And that's the thing too, is most comic book shops, they're going to have those too. If you go to Heroes Aren't Hard to Find, they're going to have a gigantic selection of those to choose from. Now they're going to be cover price, they're not going to be $5 or $10, but that is still a steal. $16.99. That's like 3 modern comic books, and you get like 20 of them in that. So you can really, sink your teeth in very easily for a small amount of money. And if you don't like it, so be it. If you love it, you can really pour yourself into it and track down all the old issues and stuff.
Yeah. Well, that was great. And before we sign off, if you have any social media you want to make sure that we plug, go right ahead. Platform's yours.
Yeah, so you can follow the Concord Microcon on both Instagram and Facebook. It's very simple. It's just Facebook or Instagram and Concord Microcon. Same thing with Beardy Weirdies on Facebook and Instagram. It's just Beardy Weirdies Comics. Very simple. That's about it. I greatly appreciate your time and efforts, and I hope to see everyone at the Concord Microcon on May 7th.
Nice. Thank you so much, Chris. This was awesome. We appreciate it.
Thank you guys too.
Thanks, Chris.